Now that VirtualBox is ready to go, I can install my first virtual machine. I can do this in two ways: by manually creating the virtual image or by loading a pre-existing appliance. Let's take a look at how we create a brand new virtual machine. The Machine menu provides a number of functions related to virtual machines. The key ones are also shown as icons in the top bar below the menu. I'll select New to create a new virtual machine. The first thing I have to do is give the VM a name. I'll call it Debian. I'll then select an operating system, Linux, and a version, Debian. VirtualBox is pretty clever. It figured out that was what the new VM called Debian might be. I'll select Next. This will take me to the memory selection, and I'll keep the default of 768 megabytes. VirtualBox then provides the option for setting up a hard disk, and I'll again take the default of a virtual hard disk. This will be created when I press the Create button, and I'll take the default VirtualBox VDI image and press Next. I'll optimize my disk space and configure the virtual disk for the default dynamic expansion, and then take the default of 8 GB maximum size. I'll press Create, and I'm done. I can now see the Debian VM is shown in the left-hand pane, and its details are listed in the right-hand pane. I haven't loaded an operating system yet, but before I do that, let's just have a look at the virtual machine configuration. In the middle of the right pane, under the storage, I can see there's an empty optical disk and an 8 GB hard disk. The next step is to find a Debian boot disk to install. The Debian website shown here contains a number of images. To install the operating system, we just need to pull down the first of the i386 ISO CDs. Let's select it from the list and download it. Okay, the ISO image is now finished downloading. Let's go back to VirtualBox. To use the ISO image as a CD, I'll click on the Storage heading, which opens the settings box for storage, and I'll click on the empty CD shown below the IDE controller. When I click on the CD icon at the right of the optical drive box, it allows me to choose a virtual optical disk file, and I can select my Debian ISO image. OK, that's selected. I can press OK now and close the settings window. We're all set up to power on the virtual machine and load Debian from the ISO disk. I'll click on the Start arrow at the top, and the Debian installation screen will be presented. I'll press Enter to install Debian. I'll select English language, Australian country code, and American English keyboard. Debian is now installing. At the top of the virtual machine window there are two messages. The first tells me that the host machine keyboard will automatically be used when the mouse is over the virtual machine window. The second message tells me the same for the mouse. We can close them. The Debian install is now waiting for a system name. I'll call it the same name as the VM, Debian, and then press Continue. I now need to enter a domain name. Let's call it local.net. I'll now enter the password for root. Let's make that the same spelt backwards, Tor, and verify it. I'll enter my name as the user, and I'll enter it again as the username. I'll add my password and verify it. I'll enter Victoria as my state for the time zone, and the installation will continue. The Debian installer now wants to know how I want to set up the hard disk. I'll use the entire disk and take the default setup options and confirm that I want the disk to be formatted. The installer is now ready to load applications. I won't load any additional disks, so I'll select No. And I won't use a network mirror, so we'll again select No. Once the applications have been loaded, I'll skip the usage survey and I'll accept the desktop and system utilities. Now the utilities have been loaded, the final installation step is to install the grub loader. I'll agree to this and select the virtual hard disk I've created as my boot disk. That's it, we've installed Debian. VirtualBox will remove the ISO image automatically, and we're now booting into our new Debian virtual machine. Here we are at the Debian login prompt. So let's go in with the credentials we set up. We're at the command prompt, and I can run the ping utility on the Debian website from which I loaded this operating system. I've got internet connection, and I'm getting ping responses. I can list the files in /etc by running the command ls/etc. There we go. I can see the running processes by entering ps. So there we are, an operational Debian system running as a virtual machine. Before we finish with Debian, let's explore the virtual machine window. We have a copy of the File, Machine and Help menu items and 3 additional menus: View, Input and Devices. The File menu is limited, as is the Machine menu. This is because they include only the items relevant to an operational VM. View provides a range of options for managing the VM window. For example, we can go to full screen mode. As we do so, it's useful to take note that we'll need to use right Ctrl + F to return to the window mode. OK, I'll enter right Ctrl and F and we'll return. The Devices menu allows the disk, network and other hardware settings to be mapped from the virtual machine to the host machine. The last 2 items in this list, clipboard and drag and drop, provide a means of exchanging information between the host and the virtual machine, but by default they're disabled. Let's take a look at the icons at the bottom of the screen. At the far right, we see the currently assigned host key, right Ctrl. The icons are activity indicators. The first is a disk activity monitor, showing the activity on the virtual hard disk, and next to it the optical disk, which is greyed out if no disk image is currently loaded. The to-screen icon is the indicator for network activity. The USB icon indicates USB activity, next to which are display and video capture activity icons. The last 3 icons provide details of the additional features and keyboard and mouse integration. We can now type exit and press enter to log out of the Debian system, and close the window to power down the virtual machine. To keep the shutdown tidy, I'll send the shutdown signal. In the left pane, we can see that Debian is now powered off.